Volume 15, this one right here, is loaded with articles that Lenin wrote between March 1908 and August 1909 in Proletari and Social Democrat. I don't have time to cover all of the articles, but it's worth pointing out here that as we move forward and the volumes get more voluptuous, I'm going to have to choose which articles are worth mentioning and those which deserve honorable mention. These articles cannot be understood outside of the context of the Stolypin agrarian reforms, which I covered in a previous episode, or the so called counter revolutionary Duma, the third session of the Duma, that seemed to destroy any progress made in 1905 towards a bourgeois republican revolution. In Marxism and Revisionism, Lenin rails against the revisionist trend in social democracy by arguing that bourgeois science and technology, which some of these people argued was a sign of progress, work to perpetuate capitalist social and economic relations, which is why small scale industry is getting increasingly impoverished and big capitalist industry is taking over. Capitalism does not mitigate economic distinctions, as some would argue, but rather aggravates them. This volume is also loaded with Lenin's reflections on the revolution of 1905 and its successes. In more than one of these reflections, he claims that what makes Russia different than, say, Germany or France is its overwhelming peasant population, which is prone to counter revolution. But he believes, as many of the workers do, that 1905 will come again. Another opportunity will emerge. And the next time, Lenin hopes, people learn from their mistakes in trusting Tsar's promises in ministers. One particularly interesting text in this regard is Leo Tolstoy as Mirror of the Russian Revolution, where Lenin says the contradictory ideology and politics of Tolstoy reflect, quote, the pent up hatred, the ripened striving for a better lot, the desire to get rid of the past, and also the immature dreaming, the political inexperience, the revolutionary flabbiness. In The Agrarian Question in Russia toward the close of the 19th century, Lenin argues simply that private ownership of land acquired with money is on the rise. It's in this text where Lenin expands on the idea of nationalizing the land for the first time, saying, quote, the land becomes free for the farmer, for the one who really wants and is able to cultivate it according to the requirements of modern farming in general and of the world market in particular. Some viewers express interest in Lenin's discussion of international events and the text, the inflammable material in world politics, and events in the Balkans and in Persia are some worth consulting in that regard. In them, he discusses the revolutionary movement of the Young Turks in Turkey and the failing of the Ottoman state and the Russian czars colluding with Britain and France to carve out the spoils of the failing Ottoman state. In Bellicose Militarism and the Anti-Militarist Tactics of Social Democracy gives us an early sense of Lenin's position on nationalism within the socialist movement. He admits that modern militarism is the result of capitalism, but that it has created conditions whereby, quote, the proletariat cannot be indifferent to the political, social, and cultural conditions of its struggle. Consequently, it cannot be indifferent to the destinies of its country. This is particularly a concern because by 1908, it was increasingly clear to anti capitalists that Germany and Britain were on a direct path to conflict due to competing capital interests. Lenin understood this, and as a response, he wrote about it in The British and German Workers Demonstrate for Peace. At the meeting of the International Socialist Bureau, delegates debated some key questions that are worth bringing up here. The first was whether the British Labour Party belonged in the Socialist International. Lenin affirmed that it did have a place. Another concern was to meet twice a year rather than once a year. Another was to admit the Socialist Party of Chile. And Another point that's important for our own time was the question over the Zionist socialists. Lenin argued that they could not join the Russian section of the group as they wanted to, and that the body decided ultimately to admit them, but not as full members, only as consultative members of the International. Another major question was over colonialism, and it's here that some members argued that there were, quote, positive forms of colonialism. For example, the Dutch delegate Van Kool, who proposed this to begin with, was eventually defeated and his proposals were withdrawn. In On the Road, Lenin argued that within the new government of the Third Duma, counter revolution, the waning party membership, the RSDLP must increase its legal and illegal activity, not decrease, including its work with the Social Democratic Duma group. In this case, Lenin was arguing against the so called Otzovists, those radical Bolsheviks who wanted to leave the Duma, like Bogdanov and Lunacharsky, or the ultimatists who demanded to send an ultimatum to Bolshevik Duma representatives demanding that they stay the radical course. Lenin says both groups are a quote caricature of Bolshevism used by Mensheviks to expose the so-called fallacies of Bolshevism. They must be liquidated, Lenin says, and the party's position must be consolidated against them. In Attitude of the Workers' Party to Religion, Lenin states that Marxists have always viewed religious organization as instruments of bourgeois reaction that serve to defend exploitation and befuddle the working class. However, the task is not to purge religion, because doing so would only embolden the church. Instead, Lenin believed that religion would gradually disappear with the education of the workers. Religion is therefore to be a private matter, but the institutional church, and its clerics in particular, must be combated and exposed for their collaboration with the Black Hundreds, those pro Tsarist politicians. Honorable mention in this volume goes to the Tsar visits Europe and the Duma members visit England, and various letters that Lenin wrote to comrades on the island of Karpi trying to open a school, an educational school. If you're interested in those, give them a read. Thanks for listening. Until next time.